let's move on from one set of complicated issues to another challenge for the industry of a rather different kind when we invite Todd Offutt, our next speaker, to address the question of piracy. And Todd, as I said at the beginning, is Commander U.S. Coast Guard, officer in charge of U.S. Maritime Liaison Office, which is based in Bahrain and has been providing for some 25 years a vital link between diverse maritime community interests and naval forces of the U.S. Navy and the 25-nation combined maritime forces. So Todd is going to talk to us about the issue of maritime piracy. So welcome to you, Todd.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. Thank you, first of all, DNV, for inviting me here. Last night, I got some feedback from the sponsor. They wanted me to change up a little bit of what I'm discussing with you today. So what you see here is a modification of two presentations shoved together, and so hopefully addresses your needs. I have to admit, when they first called me and said DNV Technical Committee would like you to address them, I was a little intimidated because my past experiences with DNV, ABS, Bureau Veritas, usually a big round table and lots of really hard questions. And so hopefully it'll be not so hard, and we'll have a nice exchange of information. So what I'm going to show you again is I'm going to touch on piracy, security, and leave some time for maybe some Q&A. It's an interesting subject. I want to make sure we're responsive to whatever you need, and so let's get started. If we can get this thing working. There we go. I just wanted to show you a quick picture. Most people don't realize the Commandant Bob Papp was in town last week. He was over in Bahrain, and these issues you're talking about, ballast water management, all these kinds of subjects, we regularly talk about those kinds of issues. And believe me, IMO and the U.S. Coast Guard is the U.S. government's representative to the IMO, very aware of the complexity of these things. You can see my experience pales in comparison probably to any single person in this room, but I just share that with you because I want you to see. When I first started out in the Coast Guard, it was a Marine inspector in the Gulf of Mexico. And many, many times I was coached and counseled and guided by my fellow inspectors and surveyors from DNV, Bureau Veritas, ABS, so I have great admiration for this community. But I also share the anxiety, again, about the types of regulations and the complexity of it all. The last thing on the bottom there is the last job I had was Deepwater Horizon. I was, again, a Marine inspector, pollution responder. I was supposed to go down to work the Deepwater Horizon, and at the time I was working with Congress. I'm the liaison to Congress for congressional issues, and I was about to fly out within 24 hours, and Admiral Thad Allen, you may know, the former Commandant of the Coast Guard, found out that I was getting on the plane and wrote me into his 6-person staff, and I became the head of legislative affairs to Deepwater Horizon and got to work with a lot of these industry folks on these various subjects that we're going to see come up. So what we're going to talk about today is briefly who we are as Maritime Liaison at Marlowe, what we do, and we're specifically going to talk about Somali piracy and the multi-point strategy for piracy. That's the piece that I put in this morning, and we're going to address that. Some outreach issues we're doing, and summary. And so who we are, Maritime Liaison Office. We're celebrating our 25th year. We're a staff element of the United States Navy. Now, I'm the only coastie on the staff. All the rest of the staff is Navy and everybody else. They speak Arabic. They're very diverse, and they speak on a number of subjects we'll talk about in a minute. I put that piece up there, the extensive reach back. The reason the Coast Guard heads that office is because they want someone who can reach back to the IMO, reach back to the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Coast Guard, Interpol, Europol, all those different agencies we do regularly. And that helps on these types of forums. When we get feedback, we push it back right away, and it goes into the process. Marlow was created in the 1987 Iran-Iraq tanker wars, you may recall at the time from history books and whatnot, for those who are around. Tankers were being indiscriminately fired upon, so the maritime forces wanted to have a link to industry to make sure that they got a safe way to transit through the waters. Marlow is the flagship, the very first of these types of offices, but we have sister units around the world. They were created after Marlow, and there's a maritime liaison units, and you see those up on the screen. Again, what we do is then we're a conduit or a connection to industry on a variety of subjects. But primarily, we foster communication. We stay apprised of changes to infrastructure and management. We try to proactively look at issues, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then we serve liaisons on a number of different issues, not just for the U.S. Navy, of course, but the 27-nation combined maritime forces that operate in these waters. These are the types of issues we work on. Again, we don't just work piracy. We work issues of commercial vessel safety, port safety security, maritime crime and illicit trafficking, terrorism. One of our hallmark things we do is search and rescue, or safety of life at sea, medical evacuations, aids and navigation, and environmental response and protection. I'm not going to read that to you, but these are all the relationships we have with different organizations around here. Most notably, you might want to point out NATO and the NATO Shipping Center and the EU NAVFOR, the European Union. I know you can't read that. These are all the different port players we work with. Each one of our liaison officers travel to 27 nations around the area, around the region, worldwide, also outside this area. We talk to all those different entities, and those really have to do with trade industry groups, special interest groups, and that's how we interact with those folks. Every year we have a signature event. This past January we had one in Dubai. Had 120 folks there from 21 countries, and our theme this year is crisis management. It just so happened we announced that several months before the conference, and then you had the Costa Concordia and a whole series of events that came along, so it was very well timed. Okay, so we're going to talk about now, touch on maritime piracy, security. When we look at security, I showed you the video in the beginning. You know, there's task force which operate all the time around here. And again, 27 nations, any one time, those nations are moving forces in and out of the area. These are air-based, we have water-based. Then we have some independent deployers that are not part of the combined maritime forces, but we coordinate with them. That's Russia, China, and some other nations. Japan is there as well. Those, again, they're not part of the combined maritime forces, but they work collectively. On the initial video, you saw a piece that said shade. It flashed up very quickly, but it was a room with a lot of people around there. Every 3 months, 115 representatives sit around a table, and we deconflict all those different naval and air operations to make sure we have good coverage. This is something we put together with our friends from National Geospatial Agency. It's a Somali piracy threat map. How many folks were here yesterday for the piracy talk? Okay, I apologize. I'm going to move quickly through those slides. It just shows how the piracy spread. But essentially, we wanted to get a better idea of how, when naval forces are applied to an area, how Somali piracy responded. We are still working on that piece, but we at least have a good picture now of how that data panned out. And I'll show you this. And again, apologies for the folks who were here yesterday. It's 2001, 2, and this is, of course, Somali piracy. 3, 4, 2005, 2006, 2008. The green line there is 2007. I just skipped over it. 2010, and then 2011. Okay, so what you see, of course, is piracy spreads out from the coast of Somalia, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and what some of the things we're doing to push that back to shore and try to address the root causes for why that is actually pushing out so far. not going to go through this, but this was what I was going to present today. This is the findings and lessons learned from pirated vessels. Yesterday's session, they talked about some of the things you see. If you want a copy of this thing, it talks to you in detail the types of experiences that crews experienced when they went on, when they were pirated and taken captive for some period, and it gives ship owners and operators tips to how to prevent it. And that was based upon when these ships are released, Naval Criminal Investigative Service goes on board and they debrief the crew. There's a number of pirates which are incarcerated, over 1,000 right now. They spoke with those folks, and then they have the evidence off of all these ships. From that, we took it and we distilled it down to about that many pages, and that's available only by email. We don't post that on our website for obvious reasons. But if you want a copy of that, great. And if you're a company that wants us to come to you and provide you more specifics relative to your particular industry, we can do that as well. Just contact us. My information will be up here at the end. None of this costs any money, of course. You just give us a call and we come there. Okay, so here's really what we're going to talk about here is, and I'm just going to talk from this because we just added this slide this morning, kind of a multi-point strategy. What are we doing to mitigate piracy, Somali piracy? I'm not talking about West Africa piracy and worldwide piracy in the Malacca Straits, but most specifically about the Gulf of Aden. Okay, so there's naval operations and deconfliction. I talked about the deconfliction. About 115 representatives every quarter come together, and they literally just, they say, where are your ships going to be? What air assets do you have? And they work out the different schedules to make sure they have good coverage, primarily through, there's a corridor that runs where most ships go, the IRTC, internationally recommended transit corridor. That's where most ships operate, and that's where we have the most coverage on. Then there's the landside solution. I told the sponsor last night when they asked me to speak about something else, I said, if you want me to address this stuff, it'll be a really short presentation because the unclassed stuff will take about 3 minutes. Suffice to say, there are things that are happening on the land side, both in terms of Puntland, Somaliland, given those residents of East Africa, other choices, other life choices, other industries, things to do other than piracy. And then there are some military operations taking place. Again, you can read about in the press, but I'm not going to address those here too much. But we're addressing the landside solution, which is, again, the root cause for why these pirates, why these residents, why these young boys are seeking a life at sea and what they think is easy money. Number 3 is on-water target targeting and resiliency. Really what we mean by that is the best management practices you've probably seen. Those are kind of the thing the industry put together that said, these are the things we can do to keep pirates off ships. PCAS for privately contracted armed security professionals. That's the armed guards, which are on board ships. That is a whole 3-hour discussion on itself. And then there's outreach. Outreach is this type of thing, and talking to ship owners and operators, traveling to their places of business and addressing their crews and their operators about what are the things they can do to make sure, again, that they have the ability to, first, defend against any pirates that come on, and secondly, this resiliency piece, for the mariners which are actually captured, traumatized, to put them back into the force, put them back on the water, there's some things they can do to make sure that the crews are resilient. And that really has to do with on the front side before anything happens. They have to condition those folks what to do and to be in a hostage situation, how to respond and how to deal with it. Number 4 is this legal finish. RAPIC, anybody heard of that down in the Seychelles? That's a group right now that handles piracy prosecution. Piracy, the legal finish, what to do with these folks once they're captured, how to bring them to justice, how to incarcerate them if they're found guilty. All those things are very complicated, but it's spread throughout a large area. We work very closely with Interpol, Europol, to make sure that we have the kind of evidence, the documentation, the things we need to do to put the people that are in fact responsible behind bars. There's another aspect of that which falls into the last piece, the criminal investigative, which is really called follow the money. Again, a whole subject on this, but there's a contact group that addresses various areas. One of those is the people that are making this money, $13 million, say, for a ship, comes in. Where's that money going to? Where's it to go? Who financed the entire operation? Who's the mastermind of this? There are teams that do forensics on the money to trace it back. And as you might imagine, they have a large board about who the kingpins are and who the different players are, and they're pursuing those folks under different ways. Okay. One of the ways about this on-water targeting and hardening is through the Dow Initiative. We showed how the pirates kind of pushed out from the shore, and now they're several hundred miles far, far from the shore of Somalia. One way they do that is through these motherships, and these motherships usually take the form of dhows. And these dhow operators are not really thinking about that, they're thinking about moving their goods. And so what we've done now is, you see in this issue right here, it says SOS. With our colleagues at the Marine Safety Center and NATO, we put together this best management practices for dhow operators. It's in 4 languages, and it tells them now, because they don't oftentimes go to these kinds of forums, it tells them how to keep pirates off their ships, what to do if they're being attacked, and who to contact afterwards. And in that way, we're trying to cut the legs out from the pirates, push them back towards shore, deprive them of the ability to get motherships. We started that about 11 months ago. Up on the right-hand side at the top, we started out with a Patterns of Life survey. It's no small challenge to identify all the different routes the dhow operators do. We captured that. It's a pattern of life. Now we're addressing those communities one by one and making sure they have the dhow flashcard on board. And we also do routine boardings by our naval craft. And when they meet dhow operators, the last thing they do is they give them one of these flashcards. All the things I've talked to you about talks about how we as Marlowe do what we need to do. We leverage an extensive network of relationships, including this forum right here, public and private sector, non-governmental, military, to bring all of these different issues to bear and to work a number of on-water contingencies. Doesn't matter what it is, any of those things I showed you in the beginning, the types of things, crisis management, pollution response, navigational safety, piracy. If you want to know what's happening with any of those particular subjects, feel free to give us a call at the Maritime Liaison Office. Again, it doesn't cost you a cent. Go ahead, we can send somebody out to you. We can respond by email, phone, whatever's good for you. Another way to get connected is on the top there is a Marlowe News. We publish it every other month. That's kind of an in-depth look at subjects which are not generally covered the way we'd like to see them covered or not enough information. The issue that's coming out next week addresses ballast water management. There's a piece in there on that. The second publication down there is a weekly we push out just by email to about 3,000 companies and contacts. It's our piracy analysis and threat to shipping. It's called PATS. We push it out once a week. Number 3 down there is maritime advisories. Those are things that are happening like right now, and you got to have information on it right away. We push out a one-pager. You can pick it up and see what's happening. It's just the highlights. It's not pretty, but it's timely. We push it out to you right away. And the last thing on the bottom is the actual front cover of the findings of fact and lessons learned from the pirated vessels. Again, if you want to copy that, shoot me an email. You can also visit our social media site, Facebook, and on there you can see kind of lighter stuff we do. I just spent the week before last steaming on a ship down through the Suez and the Red Sea, and so as we went along the way, we took some shots and pushed those up on the website. That's kind of a way we get information out that kind of informal in nature. Again, if you need to contact me or anything, that's my contact information, or again, you can just go to Facebook, just type in Maritime Liaison Office, we'll pop up there. You can do a Google search and also find us as well. I hope that was responsive to your issues, especially the one page about all the multi-point strategy, based upon the discussion I had with a sponsor last night, but I'll be here for a little while. I got to catch a flight back to Bahrain shortly, so I appreciate the chairman getting me in this point in the schedule, but thank you for your time.